Thanks for joining us for the Sunday Fast Break. Andy Olson, joined by a man who needs no introduction to Illini Nation, Cory Bradford. Thanks so much for being here.
Always a pleasure.
Talking the Illini with us. Let's start first and foremost. 6-0 in conference play in the Big Ten for the Illini so far. Just what have you seen from them in the season, and what is that momentum like when you're playing a team that has such a big win streak going?
Well, it's always good. You know, being 6-0, being the first team to do that is always great to continue that. And I think having that momentum game by game, and obviously whether it's a pretty win or ugly win, just take wins any way you can, because it's going to be about it each and every night.
Yeah, and now with Purdue coming up, that's going to be such a big game. And I'm sure we're going to get to that and break that game down. But let's start with this past week, a big win over Nebraska. It was very close at the beginning. I mean, the Cornhuskers coming out as 16-4 start in that one, Illinois on the wrong end of that, and then grind it out, as Brad Underwood calls it, rock fight against Michigan. Let's get your thoughts on the game against the Wolverines. How tough can those kinds of games be where the other team is missing their best player and you had no idea coming in? We're, of course, talking about Hunter Dickinson not being able to play in that game and kind of being a surprise for the Illini. They found out right before the game started.
Right. Which you know, you can really get yourself pumped up for, and then hearing the news before the game as a player, it kind of takes that adrenaline away from you in some way. But I think the game against Michigan, you know, hats off to those guys. They really competed. You know, I mean, what do they have to lose? Their whole mindset, well, we have to lose. They don't, plan on us winning this game anyway, and coming to a tough and amazing environment like the one we have here at the State Farm Arena, I think was a huge win for us. You know, regardless if they didn't have their star players or not. But Wolverines definitely made it a ball game, and thanks to Trent making some huge plays down the stretch, we capitalized off mistakes that Michigan made down the stretch, and we were able to pull off the win.
I'm so glad you brought up Trent, because it was a big week for him. 29 points against Nebraska. He had 11 straight at the end of that game against Michigan. What have you thought about how he's playing in his fifth year?
He's playing like a vet. You know, he's doing everything that you would want your veteran player and your team captain to do, and he's stepping up and doing such on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, that fifth year is so important. Brad Underwood has talked
absolutely
like so many times this year about veterans and being able to have those guys to step up in those big moments. DeMonte Williams has been a big veteran presence as well.
Exactly.
How much have you seen that make an impact, having those veteran guys around on this Illini
team? Those
team?
guys played a ton of basketball, as you know, and I want to say those two probably have the most games played, by any Illini player and stuff, and it showed. It showed, especially down the stretch against Michigan.
Yeah, and moving forward now to Purdue, that should be an interesting matchup inside. Williams and Edey versus Coburn. What do you make of that matchup, and what kind of excites you about seeing those big guys going up against each other?
Well, it's going to be a lot of size on the floor, tomorrow. So I think it's going to be a huge challenge for us, and I think the key to that game is rebounding. If we limit them to getting offensive rebounds and we capitalize off their mistakes and push them more much as we can in transition, I think it should be a pretty good win for us.
I'm glad you bring up rebounding, too, because it seemed like at the very beginning of that Michigan game, Wolverines were just grabbing every rebound in sight. Brad Underwood said after the game they just had more energy than Illinois did at that point. Do you think Illinois might be in trouble if they come out with that low energy again on the boards in this game against the Boilers?
Absolutely, especially with the personnel that Purdue has. And I think if you give up so many offensive rebounds, that team, Purdue, will capitalize off each and one of those rebounds. So I think the most important thing is hit and go get, box out guys, get position, fight for those loose balls, those 50-50 balls. You got to get a hand on those and obviously make them pay for every mistake they make by capitalizing on the offensive end.
When you were with the Illini through your 4 years, did you guys ever have a streak when you went 20-1 in the Big Ten?
No, not at all.
That's tough to do.
It's really tough. It's really tough. So hats off to those guys. Coaching staff has been putting amazing game plans together. The players have bought into it, and it's showing on the floor.
Yeah, what would a win against Purdue, which would be their 21st Big Ten win in 22, going back to last season, what would that momentum do you think, for a team like this that has such high aspirations and is starting to come into their own a little bit at this point of the season?
Well, it'll be a huge test for us, and obviously it'll really show what type of team we're really made of. And I think tomorrow, being able to come out with a win will be very huge for the guys, and not only just for this win for this particular game, but just carrying on to the games after.
What do you think Brad Underwood and the coaching staff needs to really focus in on to find success? Because as we saw, Purdue, is not completely immortal in the Big Ten this year. They got 2 losses. Absolutely. I mean, one to Rutgers, to a team that Illinois beat really well to begin the Big Ten season. So what do you look at as something that the coaching staff needs to zone in on to get them ready for that one, to put them in the best chance to succeed?
We'll just focus on what we have control over. I think he's really going to focus on, look, we can only control what we can do, stick to our strengths, limit the weaknesses, don't try to make the same mistake twice, and just play and win by any means.
Yeah, and man, thinking about 7-0, especially after Michigan State last night, falling against Northwestern,
right.
How much that would mean at this point, especially a 3-game lead over Purdue. Now, I'm sure players aren't necessarily looking at the standings every time when they get done with the game, but do you think that that would have a huge impact, having that 3-game lead, if they're able to get the win over Purdue for the rest of conference play?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it continues to put that gap in between, and that way you can maybe have some slip-ups here and there, which happens. You know, you can have bad games. You know, foul committed can take play, injuries can happen and stuff. So you want to try to create that as huge gap as much as possible, because at the end of the day, you know, you don't want to share a Big Ten championship with anybody. You want to have it for yourself.
You don't want to share it. Last year they were hoping to share it. And
exactly.
The Big Ten didn't come out in their favor for that one. But Cory, you're going to be at the game. What are you most looking forward to as coming back as a fan once again and seeing them playing in such a big stage?
The atmosphere itself, I think the atmosphere is going to be extremely positive, and we're going to need as much noise as possible, and we got to be that 6th man on the floor for them, and just looking forward to the atmosphere, and I'm sure the guys are going to be looking forward to the challenge.
Now, if people listen to Brad Underwood's advice to the pre-Michigan game, it would include a little bit of happy hour. I don't know if anything's going to be open at 11 a.m., but, you know, fans come in loud, whatever means necessary to get loud. But, Cory, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us on the Sunday Fast Break. We'll talk to you again next week, hopefully.
Absolutely.
All right, Cory, thank you very much, and thanks for watching.